So the CELF5 comes in a very, very comprehensive kit. The kit contains the technical manual, and this has a lot of kind of statistics and different kinds of psychometric information that's interesting but not really used much on Monday morning. There's the Stimulus Book 1 that has some of the subtests in it, and then there's Stimulus Book 2, and this has mostly the subtests for older students. There's a couple of different forms of the CELF5. One is the screener, which is very quick and easy to administer, again for screening purposes. Record form 1 is for 5 to 8-year-olds. And so if a child, again, is 5, 6, 7, or 8, this is what you'd use. And then this is the record form 2 for ages 9 to 21. So you always want to be sure that you've actually picked up the right form before the child walks through the door. The examiner's manual is really thorough and pretty easy to read, so what I want to do is take just a minute or two to show you some of the most important highlights to save you time when you're learning how to administer the CELF5 yourself. So, of course, the table of contents goes through everything. On page 1, it talks about how the CELF relates to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and how you can use the results of the CELF for children to create intervention goals that go along with the Common Core state standards. To me, that's really advantageous as a clinician because when I look at the results of the CELF, I want to know, what do I do in therapy? And what do I have teachers do in the classroom? And so this manual really gives you good guidance for that specifically. Next, on page 2, it talks about if a language disorder is affecting a student's performance, then what information is needed to plan intervention. So that's a good one to look at as well. The next thing I find really useful is on page 4, table 1.1. This is kind of a cheat sheet that goes through each subtest and gives you just a quick sentence on what each subtest does. And I love that because it's a nice overview and orientation for you to understand the whole test. The next thing on page 7 just tells you what components there are that we went over: the examiner's manual, the technical manual, the stimulus books. There's also an observational rating scale. And there's also reading and writing supplements. So the observational scale and the reading and writing supplements are supplementary, and not everyone administers them, but they are there in case you decide that you would like to add those on. Page 10 talks about the observational rating scale and kind of gives you an idea about that. And then I like how they have examples, like to fill that out about the child, you interview the teacher, the parent, and the teacher. And this gives you really good information about the child's functioning in environments such as the home and the classroom. So those are some good things there. And then I like on page 33, table 3.1, it tells what subtests you need to administer by what age the child is, so that's a nice quick reference there. Okay, so you're done administering the CELF5 to the student. Raphael is 8 years old, and so what I'm going to do is turn to Appendix A. And it has the subtest scaled scores there. And so the way that you would be looking at this is you would calculate what his raw score was for each of the subtests, and you record that on the protocol. And then let's say that for sentence comprehension, his raw score was a 19. That would be a scaled score of 5. Okay. And let's say that on the following directions, his raw score was a 19. You would just look across, that would be a scaled score of 10. So it's really pretty easy. And again, Appendix A, you convert the raw score to a scaled score, and you would record that on the front of the protocol in the appropriate boxes. So now you've done that, and then in Appendix B is the core language and index scores, and a lot of times the school district is going to want you to have that. So again, Appendix B would give you those, and so for him, we're turning to the 8-year-old section, and we're going to go down and see how his scaled scores and the sum of those gets into a core language, an index score, and also a percentile rank. So once we've determined that, not everybody uses the age equivalence. I like the age equivalence because a lot of times I find that parents and teachers don't really understand things like 7th percentile rank or a standard score of 7 or 8, but they can relate a lot better to an age equivalent. So it might be easier for a parent if I said your child is 8 years old and on this particular subtest performed at a 6-year-old level. So that Appendix C on page 226 gives those age equivalents if you'd like to use them yourself. And then on page 230, Appendix D, is the percentile ranks, and this is one that might even be good to memorize if you're so inclined. But for example, if the test scale score is 7, then you're just going to go across here, and the percentile rank would be 16. Or let's say that the test scale score is 10, you look across here, and the percentile rank would be the 50th. The school districts I've worked in mainly focus on percentile ranks in terms of qualifying a child for therapy. So this is the page that you're really going to want to rely on.